Welcome back to Fertile. I'm Em Marigold, and as always, this is your sanctuary to uncomplicate your health, reclaim body sovereignty, and awaken your fertility. Dedicated to the radical woman who knows deep within her bones there must be another way. Grab a tea, light a candle, and let's dive in. Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode. And today I really want to talk through with you a very prominent conversation that I've been having a lot lately around organic food and the real cost of convenience. So today we're talking about pay the farmer now or the pharmacist later, which essentially means we're either going to pay the farmer for real nourishment, real food, or we're going to end up paying the pharmacist to manage our chronic symptoms later. Now, I know that organic feels like this buzzword. It feels like it's for the elite or the elitist or the wealthy, the middle class. But it doesn't have to be. We need to reframe this because organic, grass-fed, free-range, all these labels did not exist not that long ago. They started around last century, kind of mid-century, so it's been about 70 years. And in the grand scheme of things, that's actually a very short time because before then, what we call organic was simply just food, right? We didn't have synthetic pesticides. We didn't have fertilizers that were chemically made and ultra-processed ingredients. They weren't a part of our human existence. And nowadays, we've flipped that over to organic being the kind of strange thing, that everything is pesticide riddled. And that if you're eating organic, you're kind of a bit like, really? Like, why, you weirdo? Sometimes I get a bit nervous to say, I don't want to eat that because it's got pesticides. And then you almost get put in this box where you're seen as being, a bit bougie, a bit snobby. And it's like, is it really snobby that you don't want to have pesticides? And I think a lot of this comes from the lack of knowledge around what pesticides can actually do for our health. I think most people will be like, yeah, I know it's bad. But I think if they knew the extent of how bad, there's absolutely no way that they would be eating that. Now, there's this quote that I see a lot around the internet, which I'm going to share with you. I believe it came from a documentary originally, but it's really potent. So are you ready? We're the only species on this earth that deliberately sprays poison on our food to stop other insects and animals from eating it, and then we go ahead and eat it ourselves. Now make that make sense. It's pretty crazy if you take a moment to sit with it and you think, we're spraying food with poison to stop others from eating it, to protect it, and then we eat it ourselves. Now that's really quite bizarre. And I understand that we introduced pesticides to support farmers, that's how it was sold originally, right? To prevent crops from going bad. And this all came about with sudden mass production. Food manufacturing was changed because of, mass production. And we suddenly would need a lot more crops. We couldn't survive almost with big crops going bad because it turned from all this pressure onto modern farming, us stopped growing our own food. So all that pressure went onto farming. So they had to use what they felt like they had to use was pesticides so that they would have more of a guarantee, right, of their crop. So I want to turn back the clock a little bit and just think about our great-grandmothers and our grandmothers or even our grandfathers. And I sat with my grandmother recently. She has got dementia, but she always remembers the past so clearly, right? Like way back. She tells me stories of her and my grandfather. And I love to have a tea with her. And, our gardens were functional food sources. They weren't manicured, sterile patches of grass. She said she grew everything. And when I speak to my mother's partner as well, and he talks about how his mother grew every single thing, they grew up on homegrown. That was the normal. Self-sufficiency was the normal, right? Lawnmowers were not a thing. And so we have somehow turned and done a 180 on everything and made synthetic normal and organic quite strange, right? And it's an out of reach. It feels really out of reach for a lot of people these days. So in this episode, I want to talk through with you first I've got a lot to say around the topic, but I also want to give you some tangible steps that you can actually start to take in eating organic. And there are ways of doing it on a budget, because I've been doing it for years on a budget, especially when I wasn't working and being a solo mama. So I will give you all the tips and tricks of what I've been doing. And we're going to just sort of debunk some myths around convenience food, the convenience trap. So we have been forced almost, I think it's a very cleverly designed system, but time has got so much value in it. And most of us these days don't have time, because couples and parents, both of them were working. Things were a lot different way back when usually you'd have one parent at home, right? So of course you have more time for gardening, more time for home cooking, home growing. Now you can do it, but it's a lot. It can be a lot when you're working 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, both of you. Like, when do you find the time to then grow food as well? But I think what we've forgotten, or purposely not been taught, is that growing food is actually very easy, and you learn a lot by experimenting. Like, potatoes are the easiest thing to grow. You literally put a potato that's got a little green shoot. You know how they sometimes go a bit, they get a little root starts coming out of them in the cupboard if they've been there for a while. You can just put that in soil and it will make loads of potatoes. This is a great one to start with. You can also grow herbs on a windowsill. You don't even need a garden, rooftop, whatever, a little balcony, but a windowsill will do. If you've got a garden, just throw some seeds out there and see what happens. You'll soon learn about it. And you can read a few books and learn about companion planting, but it really doesn't take a lot of effort. It's more the feeling or thinking that it might take a lot of effort. So convenience foods have been pushed upon us because we've been really lacking in time. So then that's when, ready meals started just lining all of the shelves of the supermarkets. Now, the problem with this is that they seem affordable. They seem cheap. You can go and grab a lasagna, right? And you think, great, that's dinner sorted. I have to cook it and it's a cheap meal. But the thing that they don't teach you is that I'm all about investments and doing anything for the long run, not for the short, no quick fixes. And I do this in all areas of my life. I talk a lot to my clients about heirloom living. So you're buying that thing for life, like that dress you choose to purchase. It's for life. It's not for a season. It's a beautiful linen dress, for example, that you spend more money on, that you're going to have for your life, to potentially pass that down to your children, grandchildren, whatever. The same goes with food. We've lost the idea of having a pantry and stocking foods and having things ready in the freezer and having it kind of pre-done. Like, being organized has kind of been stripped away from our, I would say, mindset. A lot of it's not really our fault. And I think this starts in school, which is a whole other episode. I feel like we really need to start teaching children in school how to do this, like prepare for a pandemic, for example, how to create a fire, how to cook, how to actually survive in this life, right? So before I go off on a tangent, convenience foods, they seem quite cheap, but often a store-bought lasagna, for example, versus a batch of 8 homemade ones that you could put into frozen portions in your own freezer, it's actually going to cost you so much more money to buy that convenience over making it yourself. Now, the upfront ingredient cost can feel like, okay, I've got to buy all these ingredients, which actually is not that many in lasagna, but say you've got 10 ingredients, maybe less than that. I'm not going to go into the ingredient list right now, but there's a list, right? And you have to buy enough to make your 8 to 10 lasagnas, right? For example. And you're thinking, okay, that's going to cost me a bit of money. But when you separate that out into however many meals, like say 10 portions, and you're going to put that in your freezer, the cost is so much lower than buying that lasagna in the supermarket. Now, this is the same as all bulk. Now, I have a pantry. You don't have to have a pantry that's a whole other room. It can literally be another cupboard. It can be a cupboard in your kitchen. You can find space anywhere in your house. When I say pantry, it's a space for you to store food. Now, this bit of an art really, that I feel like my grandparents really drilled into me. It was always drilled into me that you buy high quality, that you buy cheap, buy twice. So you don't ever buy anything that's poor quality. And it was always drilled into me that you buy things when they're in the sale, you buy things when they're in bulk, you store things away, you have things in your home, your cupboards are ready and full. Things like cans, pulses, dried grains, dried legumes, all those things. You can literally there are so many things that last pretty much, I would say forever, because some things don't, but last for almost a lifetime. And we've also really forgotten the whole thing around dates as well. I think so many people I speak to get really confused around the date thing when it says used by versus best before, like best before is just an idea. There's actually no expiry date. It's just best before this date, meaning it's actually just best before that date. You can still have it. So I would highly recommend buying in bulk. I have a Substack that explains a little bit more about this and where I buy from. But there are some really great companies. So you can buy, like when you go to the supermarket, for example, and buy a small bag of rice, it might only be like £1, but you're paying £1 for like 250 grams, where you could get 5 kilos of rice for like £5, for example. So yes, a lot of us think, okay, that's only £1, I'm going to grab that. But if you spent like £5 or £10, however much it is, it's so much cheaper. You've just got to find the space for it. A lot of people say, I don't have the space to store all of this. Yes, you will find the space. You can definitely find the space. It's the same way of I go to a farm to buy 30 egg tray, which costs me £11, instead of going to the supermarket to buy pretty much the same organic eggs, which cost £5 for only like a box of 6. Which is really ridiculous. So you can see how this starts to work. The other trap that there is in this convenience food is usually there are so many more preservatives, numbers, hidden ingredients you have no control over when you buy like a store-bought lasagna. They usually have things like dextrose, which are awful for spiking your blood sugar, especially if you've got things like PCOS or you're trying to conceive. We don't want to be spiking blood sugar. And it's not the same as like a bit of real sugar is okay, but think these hidden like sucrosey, dextrosey, I won't go into that too much. But have a look at the ingredients on the back. You don't have to get overwhelmed by what everything means, but if it's got more than 10 ingredients and it's a lasagna, what's a lasagna got to have in it? Tomatoes, meat, cheese, bit of milk, pasta, some herbs, bit of salt and pepper. What have I missed? That's about it, right? And then if you usually turn over a supermarket one, it's got like 20 plus ingredients, all these little extra numbery things at the end. And yeah, of course, they've got to preserve it. There's so many legal aspects to it for it to be in that supermarket. But trust me, if you could spend, I tend to have Sundays as my get things ready for the weekday. It's kind of laundry around the house, playing with my son. We'll go and do, if it's summer, we'll be like fruit picking or something, or he's on his bike. While the laundry's on, I'll probably have something on the stove or in the slow cooker as well. I tend to go to the farmer's market on a Friday and get everything to make a bone broth for the week and just throw it all in the pan, and it's just on the stove low for like a day and a half. And I don't have to do it. It's just doing it in the background. The same way as preparing food for the week, I'll cook like a load of rice. I'll soak some beans and cook some beans and put olive oil and a bit of salt and some paprika. Got my beans ready. Probably got sardines in the cupboard for a quick lunch or snack that I can have. I'll boil like 10 eggs, which I can just eat an egg for a snack, or I'll make egg mayo for sandwiches, so I'll think about probably what we like and what we're going to eat that week. And I'll just do some bits of cooking. I might make a load of ghee if we've run out that month. And then I might make a main meal that's probably going to last 2 or 3 nights that week, and then enough that I could then freeze for other days, especially if I'm in my luteal phase, pre-menstrual, and I have no energy or desire to cook. I might, if I'm going to make myself a nice little chocolate pudding, which I will make out of Greek yogurt, cacao powder and honey, the simplest thing ever. I'll make like 4 pots, keep 1 because I know that I'm approaching luteal phase and I'm going to need them. And I will put the rest in the freezer so they're ready when I don't have the energy. It's about thinking ahead. And in those moments of you feel like, I just don't want to spend my Sunday doing that, you're going to thank your future self. You're going to be like, I'm so glad that I did that. Or no, you thank your past self. I don't know. You thank yourself. You're like, I'm so happy I did that because now you've got this little treat in the freezer, you know, and that lasagna. So maybe you make a paella or you make a risotto or whatever it is you're making, and you make enough that you can freeze at least 2 portions for later. Right? Great. So it feels like extra effort, but it's actually not, because you're already doing it. You're already making dinner. Just make enough for like 8 people. If there's only like 4 of you, then you've got a whole other meal there set for another day, which you can freeze. So a lot of this comes down to organization. So you're going to want to organize your drawers. I literally have a fish and meat drawer. I have a bread and dairy drawer where I actually also freeze butter. You can freeze butter. I freeze bread. I buy loads of pita breads because my son loves them for his kindergarten. So I keep them in there stocked up. We have lots of frozen peas and sweet corn and organic berries in there. Sometimes we go foraging for berries and I freeze them too. So we've got them for later. And then we've got a meal drawer. So I just make sure you've always got plenty of Tupperware. A lot of my friends and family think I'm hilarious because I'm just obsessed with having amazing Tupperware, always glass. I've got like stacks of it. You can never have too much Tupperware. It's so useful. So you can just throw it in the Tupperware, throw it in the freezer. I usually get like a little Sharpie pen, permanent pen, and just write on the lid and just say what it is, because actually they do wash off. You can just use a little metal scourer and just take it off next time. So it does wash off. So I'll just say what it is so I don't forget, because often I will freeze things and be like, what the hell is that? Or what the heaven is that? Recently trying to use the word heaven, not hell, because our language and the words that we use are really important, and they definitely, translate into the day. So anyway, now, okay, we've talked a little bit about convenience. I know it's so easy to grab things. I really do. And like occasionally it's fine, but make sure you kind of think about what you're grabbing. So my grabbable meal, if I'm completely exhausted, I don't have enough in the freezer. I usually do have enough in the freezer, but maybe I just don't feel like it, or I forgot to defrost it. Then I'll go and get some fresh pasta, right? Have a look at the back, make sure it's just a simple ingredient list, okay? Just fresh pasta, right? We don't want like 20 ingredients, fresh pasta. And you can just have that, saute it in some butter or a bit of pesto, and you've got a wonderful dinner. Fresh pasta is fantastic. You can also go and get, what else can you get? A pizza probably, but like a nice sourdough one. So most of the time we want to be home cooking and preparing. I know a lot of my clients really struggle with this. So I always say, okay, you've got your Sunday prep day where you're probably creating a few different Tupperwares in the fridge so that you can create like a bowl. So I like to have rice usually, like a brown basmati. I like to have some beans. I always have legumes because they're essential for liver support, detoxing hormones, and keeping you regular. I love having fresh herbs. I've got fresh herbs in the garden that I use. And I might just roast a load of veg as well, depending on what season it is. I don't tend to roast so much in the summer. I'll just have like maybe a few sauteed things. Maybe I'll just steam some beans, like green beans or some courgette. And then I'll grab some sardines from the cupboard, because sardines are just so incredible for fertility and women's health. The oily fish, honestly. And you can just grab them from a tin. It's like the easiest lunch. So you can create like a little bowl for lunch. That's what I tend to do, especially on busy work days. I'll also have my boiled eggs in the fridge. So I can either just add that to my bowl and create like almost like a Buddha bowl. And it just makes it really easy, and it's still fresh. It's fresh every day. And then in the evening, I tend to cook. And then that, sometimes if I've got enough left over, I will have that the next day for lunch, or I'll put that leftover portion in the freezer. So you've kind of got a little bit of an intro into how I sort of prep my week. But the key really is always having a good, clean, organized kitchen, clean, organized pantry and fridge. You can see everything. You also want to spend like once a month that you go around and do a little bit of an assessment, see what you're low on, and order all of the things that you need so that you're ready for the month ahead, right? I also have sticky notes all over my freezer of the things that I know I'm running low on. I'll have like a bulk list of all the things I need. I'll buy olive oil in bulk, all my grains, beans. I get honey in bulk. What else do I get in bulk? And then I have my fresh list where I go to the farm and get my raw milk, and I'll stop by the other farm to get my eggs. And yeah, it's a little bit more effort sometimes, but I would much rather do that than just go to one supermarket where it's actually got high costs. And these days you can't really tell the quality. Even organic is becoming a little bit of a loophole for many brands. It can say organic, but then it can have in other sort of wording that it's not 100% organic. And it's, it's also, we want to be paying the farmer, because the farmers are really struggling right now and they're not getting paid very well for all of the work they're doing. Supermarkets take a huge cut. So if you can boycott the supermarket as much as possible and go straight to the farmer, then you'd know it's amazing. Now, let's talk a little bit about what you can do in terms of organic. So, you may have heard this term, the clean 15 or the dirty dozen. It essentially means there are certain fruits and veg which are clean and some that are technically dirty in terms of they will really soak in the pesticides. So it's not always the case that the things that have thicker skins like avocados and bananas, but a lot of the time it is. So avocados, bananas, for example, you don't have to have them organic. But other things, especially like berries and greens, really, they need to be organic. Fruit, 100% organic. Meat and dairy, always organic, straight from a farm. I wouldn't even risk it. And it's just thinking about your health first, right? If you're dealing with symptoms right now, especially if you've got things like endometriosis, you don't even want to risk another flare. So trust me on this. Try with the clean 15 dirty dozen. This is going to really help. You can just Google that. It will give you quite a good list. So you're going to want to focus. The dirty dozen are the ones that you do buy organic, and the clean 15, you're just like, if I can get it organic, great, but I'm not going to worry too much about it. I also don't always buy 100% organic in terms of it's certified organic. I speak to people. So we have a local market and I go and just have a chat and I tell him and say, look, I'm not interested in any pesticides. Can you tell me what's pesticide free? And he's like, yeah, none of this is termed organic because we can't afford the certification, but this is pesticide free. This is straight from Kent. This is straight from France. And I also know that in Europe, they've got quite strict policies now around pesticide use. So if it's from Europe, I'm like, it's probably not got pesticides. So I'm like less worried, but America, absolutely no way. Where else? Probably I would be a bit cautious of South America, potentially. So what else? Veg box schemes. So again, you don't always have to go organic, but speak to local veg box schemes. Ask them. Organic certification is really expensive. I know this because when I used to make products myself, it was a whole thing. And my products were organic, 100% organic. But to actually term them organic was really expensive, and I wasn't allowed to say they were organic, and I wasn't going to spend thousands on just being able to say that, because it was, this is why farmers really struggle, because they have to spend so many additional fees just to prove something. And there was some really strange, I don't even know if I trust the word organic, because when I was making these products, my products were organic. Then I could pay to have them certified organic, but then no one was checking to actually see if they were organic. So can you just go and buy an organic certification and have no assessment on the actual product? So I wouldn't always trust that. Just go straight to farmers. We have lots of local veg box schemes around here. There's one that I use that, again, they are not certified organic, but they're pesticide free, and that's all I care about. So essentially there's that option. Dirty dozen, we're looking at clean 15, we're looking at veg box schemes. You can also find local allotments, like people that grow, they love growing, and they often have a bounty, like too much that they can't even deal with it sometimes. So they often give to neighbors and friends, but you could go and actually do like a community kind of share thing where you go and help out and volunteer. Some people give you like a whole veg box at the end of a volunteer day. That might be something you have time for. Otherwise, you could just be friendly, go and have some chats with some people at the allotments, become their friend and ask them if they need help. And if they don't, like maybe they want to give you some of their veggies if they have too much, or you could pay them a little bit towards it. I'm sure they would love that. So really it's about connections, right? And just having those open conversations. And then again, micro growing. So you don't need an acre. You just need a windowsill for herbs. You can also grow tomato plants like on a little balcony, community gardens we already said about. And then you can also share an allotment with a friend as well. Like I used to have an allotment. It was not expensive at all. I think we paid, it was like 10 I can't remember, but I remember it being very cheap. I think it was £70 every season or something. It was really low, really low. And we grew so much. We had so much food all the time. And we gave it away because we were like, I don't know what to do with like 30 courgettes. So those are some small changes you can start doing. So yeah, can like talk to, if you've got a market in town, I'll talk to them about it. And then the other side of this is, what if you are on a budget? Like, what can you sacrifice right now? Because there is always a way. And I know that if you're not used to spending quite a lot of money on food, it can feel like something you might not want to do, but the cost is going to outweigh the actual price, right? So if you think about it in terms of your health, you're literally investing in your future. Imagine yourself as like an older person. You're an elder. You don't want to be riddled with arthritis and pain and scoliosis or Alzheimer's and all these things that people think come with age. They don't come with age. They come with a whole life full of chemicals that have built up over time. So think about it now. Think, how can I invest in my future self and my children and my grandchildren? This is not just about you, right? It's about your own life, but your family, extended family and friends, and the earth, right? Our Mother Earth, who we love dearly, who gives us so much. So we're thinking about, okay, how can we invest in ourselves? So when you go to the farm or you get your veg box, you're going to think every time you eat that beautiful food that's actually so full of nutrition, what you're actually giving yourself and your body. It's preventative medicine, right? That's what we're all trying to aim for. Now, another little angle to think about is that I don't think a lot of people think about, but I think about. There is a huge difference between a bright orange organic carrot covered in mud and a whitish orange, pale, anemic looking, very clean, sterile carrot in a supermarket. Now, when I transitioned to pretty much only eating organic, I realized that I was eating a lot less and I was satiated, meaning I was full. Now, your body is highly intelligent. And if you're someone who is struggling with cravings, you've got a bit of a sweet tooth, your body's looking for energy, right? And so if you're eating high quality food, yes, it might be more expensive. You're going to be satiated, full, quicker. You're going to need smaller portions, smaller amount of eating. I remember I was eating non-organic. I had no idea at the time. I mean, I spent my whole life pretty much eating non-organic, but I was always hungry, always eating, I couldn't quench it. And I know that that's because I wasn't getting enough minerals. The soil was already completely depleted. We know that. And our organic farmers are doing their best, especially biodynamic farms, are trying to replenish those lost minerals, like especially magnesium. They're really, really depleted over years and years of these awful pesticides and synthetic farming practices have destroyed our soils and our biodiversity. And you know, if you can go really deep on this topic because our microbiome is not really anything different from, it's like the macro and the micro, we're connected. We have microbiome everywhere in our gut, but it's all living on our skin as well. Majority of health is coming from this disconnection, and you can say that's in so many different, ways. There's emotional element to that, a physical connection to that. And so if you think about, okay, you've got this beautiful organic courgette that you've just maybe grown yourself, and you roast that with a little bit of olive oil, a bit of salt and pepper. I mean, it's so delicious. It's got so much more taste. And the thing is, once you go to eating high quality, nutrient dense food, you'll never be able to go back because you'll be like, this tastes like water, this carrot. There's absolutely zero flavor in it. And it's one of the kind of beautiful but also quite hard things when you start eating better. So I do want to acknowledge that this can be out of reach for some. I know, I've been there, and some of us are just surviving in this world and we don't have the privilege to choose. We can just do our best to just make sure we can get a meal on the table. However, I really hope this was helpful in just thinking about, okay, could I do a veg box scheme? Even if it's like once a month. How can you just reduce your pesticide usage? There's been a lot of studies lately that if you can just reduce your pesticide usage by like even 20%, you can cut out many conditions, many chronic conditions. So think about, okay, could you just get a veg box once a month? Could you just switch your meat and fish to grass-fed and wild? Could you just do that and eat less meat, but eat less frequently, but high quality meat? You know, instead of having like meat 3 times a week, maybe you just have meat once a week and you have a really good organic piece of meat that's going to fill you with nutrition. And the same with fish. Don't be having any farmed parasite-rich fish. That's going to do you no favors, you know, just wild fish occasionally. You'll be feeling amazing. You don't need to have it all the time, every single night of the week. And then eat a lot more vegetarian for like the rest of the week. Why not? And see how you go. Grow a few herbs on a windowsill. Now, another thing that I'd like to just sort of note before we close is the kind of hidden biological burden. So I kind of touched on about supermarket convenience food. They're full of things like modified starches and dextrose and synthetic preservatives, E-numbers, all of that stuff. There's a load. So your liver is the organ that has to detox everything. It's almost like the recycling plant of the body. Okay. Everything that goes in has to come out. It has to be processed, recycled, broken down into safe elements, and then removed. Now, especially if you're someone dealing with something like adenomyosis, endometriosis, then this is going to be even more pivotal for you because your body has already likely got adhesions, which is aggravated by estrogen, right? And your liver's job is to process not just toxins and synthetic things, it's to process hormones and out of the body. So you're literally going to poo out excess estrogen. I know that's quite graphic, but I mean, there's no other way to say it. So if your body is so busy dealing with pesticides and because it's always going to prioritize toxins, trying to take out these toxins from your body, it's going to really struggle with regulating and balancing your hormones and taking any excess estrogen out, meaning you're going to have more adhesions, more pain. So this is really essential. And it's likely that, you know, you could just go and get a non-organic thing and you don't even think about it. Maybe you eat like a punnet of non-organic grapes and you've suddenly got a flare at dinner and you're like, why have I got a flare? Because you haven't even associated that huge bunch of pesticides that have now aggravated your immune system, right? Which has then triggered another flare. So I guess it depends on the price versus the cost. This is the biggest question for everyone, right? It's the price now or the cost later, always. So think about the what we call toxic bucket. How full is your toxic bucket? How full is that? How much is your liver currently trying to deal with? So we want it to have less to deal with. It's already overstimulated by all the pollution and the smells all the time. And if someone walks past you with their toxic aftershave and maybe you're wearing like polyester leggings and then you're burning some paraffin wax candle and maybe you've got like Febreze in your home and your liver is completely overburdened and then you just go and eat a punnet of grapes full of pesticides. So it's like, we're not trying to get overwhelmed and hugely the anxiety rising from this. You know, I know information can feel really overwhelming sometimes, but you just got to start small. Like, what are the micro steps you can take today? That might be simply just getting a veg box occasionally, right? We don't have to do it all at once. Just start slow. Now, my last note on this large topic is, you know, when we went through the pandemic, people panicked. They had no idea what they needed. We were like selling out in toilet rolls. I mean, I can't believe people were panic buying toilet rolls. Of all the things, like if you really ran out of toilet roll, would it be the end of the world? Just like use a flannel or something, or just use your hand or bidet. Like, so what? You need to be prepared for any future pandemics, right? We have no idea whether things are going to arise. There's so much talk about things arising again. And don't you want to be prepared for that? So just start a pantry, start a freezer, start connecting with people that grow, because the next time the supermarket shelves are empty, you don't want to be relying on those convenience foods. You want to know how to make a lasagna. You want to have free butter in the freezer. You want to have a whole cupboard full of grains and beans and sardines, and you can even buy bone broth in a carton now. You can buy milk in a carton. I mean, when I say milk, I probably would only buy like a high quality, like bonsai milk, right? I would never buy like long life cow's milk personally. You can get jars of beans. You can get jars of olives. I mean, it's like pretty endless. So start a pantry. It's a really good idea. then you're not always going out to the shop. Do you really want to waste your time going out to the shop every day to shop to get food? No, just go like once a month, and then occasionally you can pop to the supermarket if you've forgotten something, but it shouldn't be somewhere that you're going every day after work because you can't seem to catch up on your food, right? Think about your grandparents. Think about what they did. I mean, you literally have to eat so much more food today to get the same nutrition that our grandparents got from one carrot. Like one carrot, you could get all your nutrition. I mean, not all your nutrition, but you get my point. It's like everything is so weak nowadays, like in terms of minerals and nutrition. So it's essential, you know. So think about those cravings that come in and what you can actually do. Maybe sometimes if you're in your luteal phase, yeah, go and get a nice dark chocolate organic bar. But other times think, am I just depleted today? Maybe I could really do with a really good meal. Like maybe it's time to go and get myself a really lovely grass-fed steak. Or maybe I'm going to go get myself that wild salmon I've been looking at for a while and just have that with some green beans, you know, and some nice new potatoes. Keep it simple. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really hope this was enlightening. I hope it kind of sparked your mind to think a little bit about how to eat. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out on Instagram or in the comments here. I would love to talk to you more about this. Get to know people who own land as well, right? Find some friends and just see, like, be inquisitive, curious, ask questions, try and get yourself out of this kind of system that keeps you small and quiet and trapped, you know? Think about it. All right, sending you so much love, and I will see you soon. Bye.